What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTB Ravens Media, bringing you Ravens content every single day. If you want to see that daily Ravens content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. And if you want to get notified every single time I upload a brand new video, hit the notification bell as well, because I'm uploading another video later tonight, and it will be recapping the pressers from all the different players that talked to the media today, because there were a few players, as well as John Harbaugh. So I'll go over the recaps of those. That'll be out. Honestly, I don't know what time it is, so just turn on the notification bell or just check back later tonight. I'll have that recap out. But in this video, I'm going to be talking about Ja'Wuan James and the Ravens signing him, because they did it yesterday. Was unable to make the video yesterday. Did not have very much time because I'm in the process of moving, but I have more time today. I'm able to do it, and let's get into it. So if you didn't know, Ravens signed offensive tackle Ja'Wuan James for a 2-year, $9 million deal. And if you just hear that and you're like, well, we already signed Villanueva, I don't know if "don't worry" is the right word for it, but Ja'Wuan James isn't playing this year. He is injured. He tore his Achilles in Denver at their facilities, and he signed with the Ravens, and he's going to be recovering with the Ravens. And then the hope is that next year he could potentially be playing. And now, obviously, the Ravens aren't signing him to be our left tackle. That is not the case. We have Ronnie Stanley. So the assumption is that the Ravens are signing him to potentially be the right tackle next year. That puts the Ravens in a bit of a bind in the sense that they also have Alejandro Villanueva. But I wouldn't really call it a bind, because Ja'Wuan James could come back and be an excellent player for the Ravens. Now, Alejandro Villanueva obviously will be the right tackle this year. And depending on how he plays in the Greg Roman system with the Ravens, as he has struggled last year, we'll see what happens. If he plays really, really well, then there may not be a need for Ja'Wuan James. But if he does struggle, and if he isn't like a really good offensive lineman, if he's solid but could be better, there's a chance that Ja'Wuan James could take his spot. Now, how could the Ravens get Ja'Wuan James for such a cheap deal? He is, y'all say Sammy Watkins is injury prone. Ja'Wuan James is significantly more injury prone. He really hasn't played a full season in like 5 years. like I believe 2016 was like the last time that Ja'Wuan James really was able to play a consistent season. He's kind of just been in and out. And I guess 2018, I'm sorry, it was 2018 that he last played. And in that season, he did have a 72.4 PFF grade, but he's just wildly inconsistent in his play. It's really rough. However, when he's played, he's been pretty good, which is the benefit. Now, the 72.4 PFF grade is comparable. I saw a tweet from, I'll give the person credit for who tweeted it. It was a tweet by, never mind, I can't find it. So, it was from Mike Tannenbaum. And he said that basically in their last year of play, the recent Ravens tackles have all had similar PFF grades. Orlando Brown 76, Alejandro Villanueva had a 74, and Ja'Wuan James had a 72.4. But in 2016, Ja'Wuan James did have a higher grade. That was his best season on PFF, I believe, with a 75.1. And a 75.1 and a 72.4 are solid grades. That's not bad at all. If you're in the 70s, you're good. If you're in the 80s, you're great. And if you're in the 90s, you're absolutely elite on PFF. That's how it works. It's very different from like a high school, how a teacher would say, like, if you get a C, that's a bad grade. No. Some people think C's are completely okay. And yes, they are absolutely solid. Don't get that twisted. But overall, Ja'Wuan James is going to come in and potentially be a solid player. And the deal is very friendly to the Ravens, because he's going to be able to learn the system for an entire year, rehabbing with the Ravens, and then he'll get his shot. And that's what I like the most out of it, is that the Ravens get to monitor his progress. They get to be in charge of, kind of how he's rehabbing. And because that's a very team-specific thing, how do they feel that he's ready to come back? They're in charge of all of those things, rather than waiting a year, which some teams probably would have done, and then tried to sign him. Look at like Mitchell Schwartz, yet to be signed as an offensive tackle, because he's injured. And that's something. And I don't think Eric Fisher's been signed as well. He may have been signed. I don't think he has been signed because teams are like, okay, let's wait for them to rehab and then get it. But the Ravens were like, no, let's get Ja'Wuan James early because if he's rehabbed, he's going to be a solid offensive tackle on the market, and we're going to get him on a quick, nice deal for the Ravens. And so then it's going to bring into the competition Villanueva versus Ja'Wuan James. And Ja'Wuan James is definitely younger than Alejandro Villanueva. He was drafted in 2014, and that makes him 29 years old. Not that being drafted changes your age, but he's 29 years old. So if Villanueva is regressing, we're going to have a good backup tackle. And like I brought up in the earlier video that I made today, the Ravens didn't draft tackle depth this year. And I think a lot of people expected the Ravens to go after tackles in the draft, especially because we didn't have Villanueva and we didn't have really any certainty on what we were doing at the right tackle position after trading Orlando Brown. And honestly, at the left tackle position as well, with whether or not Ronnie Stanley is going to be able to play on week 1, because it is a question mark. Now, I think it probably will happen. He'll be able to play. And Ja'Wuan James is not somebody that would be able to play week 1. He tore his Achilles. But, maybe the signing that we made earlier today would be able to step into that shoe for week 1 and play left tackle. I don't know. But the tackle depth is something that the Ravens need. And next year, they will have it. And obviously, Alejandro Villanueva is on a more expensive deal next year. Remember, he had a large roster bonus for being on the team next year. So the Ravens could negate that by having Ja'Wuan James and swapping him out for Villanueva. And it could be a really brilliant strategy by Eric DeCosta, because you sign him, Villanueva, and you're like, okay, this first year is going to be pretty cheap, kind of like a prove it. But we have Ja'Wuan James as a backup. So if you're not better than him, we'll cut you. And the second part of the deal, which is why Villanueva signed it, was to get that larger amount of money. But he wasn't going to be able to get that unless he could prove himself. We could get rid of that completely. Put in Ja'Wuan James if he's available, if he's good, and do that sort of thing. So it's a very, very smart move. And obviously, I think the Ravens will draft an offensive tackle next year. We have a ton of draft picks in the later rounds. I think we have 3 or 4 fourth-round picks. We got a lot of comp picks, things like that. Overall, the Ravens are going to be able to replace the offensive tackle position, but we'll have a guy I can guarantee, unless we have injuries, we will have a good veteran player that's at least played significant time at offensive tackle that will be there to help at least mentor a young offensive tackle that we're able to draft. So if we draft a guy in the 4th, 5th, 6th round, they'll be playing behind either Alejandro Villanueva or Ja'Wuan James, which just helps their development, playing behind a good veteran, a good leader. And so overall, I think this is a really smart move to sign Ja'Wuan James. And I know a lot of people are disappointed in that we're getting all these signings and we didn't get Julio. But I will say that there was news that the Ravens weren't targeting Julio after the draft. They talked about trading for Julio before the draft. However, once they drafted Rashad Bateman, they completely left conversation. So it wasn't something where they were looking at it after the draft like, oh, we could get Julio. Let's try and start saving money. That wasn't in their thought process. What they're doing is what we as Ravens fans should love. They are protecting Lamar. They are protecting Lamar, getting him as many options at offensive linemen as possible. And, because when you bring in risky players, such as a Ja'Wuan James, because you don't know how healthy he's going to be able to be, or an Alejandro Villanueva, who had a down season last year, got to bring in those options. So when you bring in options, if one of them doesn't pan out, you have another one. It's similar to what the Ravens did in the draft, and they were like, oh, let's draft Tim Williams. But they also drafted Tyus Bowser because they wanted options. One of them, Tim Williams, really didn't pan out. But all of a sudden, they were like, oh, we still got Bowser. Plug him in, boom. We got kind of an edge rusher and, kind of coverage linebacker all in one. That's what we're doing at the offensive line spot now, and I love it. We got a lot of good left guards. We don't have a lot of left tackle depth, but we have decent center depth with Makari as a backup center. These are good things, and obviously we improved the right guard spot. So overall, I think that Eric DeCosta's done a really good job this offseason. I think Ja'Wuan James is a great signing, low risk, high reward type of deal. So overall, I think that's going to do it for this video. Let me know your thoughts on the Ja'Wuan James signing. I will have a video out later tonight going over the player press conferences and things like that, and then also talking about who missed practices and all of that. But thank you everybody for watching. Subscribe for daily Ravens content, and I will see all of you again later tonight and then tomorrow.